Now, again, in fairness to Trump, or the Trump administration, the US government has always been involved in making very radical, sometimes extreme decisions on immigration. Obama, during his 8th year, has issued a number of executive orders. And those executive orders relate to overhauling the deportation policy. And those executives were in fact sweeping. And it is anticipated that with Trump coming in and giving the campaign statements that he made, that this is going to be something that will be of major focus. And such things as what to do with more than 11 million people who are in the United States without permission. All of that, I think, is something that's going to come up and has to be addressed by the courts. And there will be an issues as to what can the political branch do, and the courts will have to weigh in, and there are a number of cases already that are in the system that are working their way that will have to come up and be addressed in the next year, or so. But in all of this, the underlying issue here will be whether the right to do all of these things are consistent with the Fourth Amendment. Now, let me just give an example of what I mean by that. One of the statements that Donald Trump made during the campaign, and I'm going to quote what he said, he suggested that the federal government, quote, impound all remittance payments derived from illegal wages. And that's what he said. This is an exact quote. Impound all remittance payments derived from illegal wages. It's not very clear what he's saying, but what it appears to mean is that when a person is illegally in the country, gets a job and gets paid, and then decide, as most of them do, to send some of the money to relatives in the home country, that the government could step in and seize those funds. Now, if this statement were to be adopted to be a policy, there is no doubt that civil rights groups that represent minorities, including undocumented immigrants, would promptly sue. And they will allege that how can you take away people's earnings who have actually worked? Yes, there are laws on the books that allows the government to seize proceeds of a crime, but is having a job in the United States because you're undocumented, is that a crime that warrants seizure of those things, of those funds? And I think that will be the kind of legal challenge that you're going to see will be such that you really cannot do that, and I think that the courts will be receptive to a claim that the government cannot simply do that without dealing with those cases on a case-by-case basis. It cannot be a blanket policy. So I wanted to just talk about that, just to highlight, what could be the effect of some of the statements that Mr. Trump made when he was running, and if they are turned into policy, what that will mean, for the United States. Now, the thing I want to talk about next is the case of Arizona versus the United States. And the importance of this case is that it is central to the kind of rhetoric that we had during the election by Mr. Trump, and the kind of ordered profiling that you sometimes see when you're trying to control immigration or deal with illegal immigration or undocumented individuals who are in the United States. And that case, as you can see, flowed from the passage of the Arizona Senate Bill SB 1070, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and there were portions of that law that essentially subjected Latinos to racial profiling. They were required to show identification at all times. They were required, not to search for a job or hold a job in the state. The state police was allowed to arrest an individual suspected of being an illegal immigrant. Now, that case was challenged by the U.S. government under Obama, and then the district court judge in that case, held that Latinos will be subject to racial profiling. It went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal, upheld, ban on parts of the law, not all parts of it, that was found to be such that would subject Latinos, to racial profiling, and it went to the Supreme Court. And on June 25, 2012, the court struck down 3 of the 4 provisions of SB 770. Justice Kennedy, who wrote for the majority, held that sections 3, 5C, and 6 were preempted by federal law, and struck down these 3 provisions, the provision that required legal immigrants to carry registration documents at all times. So in other words, if you're here legally and you have a green card, you must carry it at all times. If you don't carry it, then they could arrest you and detain you. Then the next one was allow state police to arrest any individual for suspicion of being an illegal immigrant. And then the third one was it was a crime for an illegal immigrant to even look for a job or to hold one in the state. Now all of this was struck down. The minority, which included Justice Scalia and others, did not agree to strike down those 3 provisions. However, all of the justices agreed to uphold the provision of the law allowing Arizona State Police to investigate the immigration status of an individual stopped, detained, or arrested if there is reasonable suspicion that the individual is in the country illegally.